As an arcade punk in the 80's, I remember watching an older guy at the arcade pour an endless stream of quarters into a game that clearly hated him. Then, I finally had my chance to step up. I immediately learned a harsh lesson about 1980s game design. The decade gave us some of the most brutal quarter munchers ever made, and in this video, let's find out if your memories of these 10 classic titles are as painful as mine.
Prediction? Yes, prediction. Pain.
My first real encounter with arcade cruelty was at the local convenience store in my town, Ghosts N Goblins. I saw a knight in shiny armor and thought, that looks cool. I was dead within 30 seconds. You die in 2 hits, and when you die, you lose your weapon. The core gameplay? You control Arthur, a knight who throws lances or axes. No continues from the same spot. You get sent back to a checkpoint. Enemies respond endlessly, and even worse, if you beat the final boss, the game makes you replay the whole thing on a harder difficulty to see the true ending. And the knockback was the worst. Getting hit sends you flying backwards, usually into a pit. Still, it's widely regarded as one of the hardest games ever made. Dragon's Lair from 1983 looked like nothing else. It was a Laserdisc game with hand-drawn animation from former Disney artist Don Bluth. But you weren't really controlling the action. You were selecting the correct move at the exact right microsecond, QuickTime events before they were a thing. Press right instead of up, instant death. Wait half a second, instant death. I died in the first room because I didn't pull the sword out fast enough. And it cost 50 cents to play, not a single quarter, and that could just add up way too fast. Over time, I began to appreciate its gameplay though. See, it's like a rhythm game before rhythm games existed. But my advice? Try it on an emulator with save states. Otherwise, you'll burn through a bag of quarters pretty darn quick. Defender is notorious for its complex control scheme. 5 buttons plus a joystick. Thrust, reverse, fire, smart bomb, and hyperspace. The gameplay? Protect humanoids while aliens try to abduct them. You couldn't even see the whole map. Enemies would swoop in from behind constantly, and the difficulty ramps up incredibly fast. Aliens grab a humanoid and mutate it into a faster, more aggressive enemy. I even remember my dad hitting hyperspace and then reappearing inside an enemy. The controls are actually tight, it's just overwhelming at first. The sound design was amazing for 1981. You could hear enemies warping in from off-screen, coming to take more of your hard-earned quarters, of course. R-Type defined the need for absolute memorization. I saw this cabinet at the local pizza parlor in my hood, and I thought, I'm good at shooters. It didn't matter. I died in about 20 seconds. You get this cool force pod that blocks shots, but the game throws waves of enemies from every angle. You either remember the pattern, or you die. You'll also lose all your power-ups when you die, then respawn at a checkpoint in a completely weak state. And the checkpoints are way too far apart. But the visuals were pretty stunning for 1987, with biomechanical enemy designs that still look pretty creepy today. It's a classic, but I'm sorry. This game just hates everyone who tries to play it. Now, Donkey Kong looks so simple on the surface. You play as Jumpman, later known as Mario. You climb platforms, dodge barrels, and rescue Pauline, the damsel in distress, from a giant ape. But the timing required in the latter levels is punishingly precise. I was terrible at it. The barrel physics are actually semi-random. Sometimes the barrel goes down a ladder, sometimes it doesn't. And in the second stage, the rivet level, it has fireballs that speed up the longer you stay. The jumping arc feels a bit loose or floaty. And the fourth stage requires an almost unfair level of timing. I mean, down to the specific frame of animation. It's a classic, it's addictive, and a real quarter muncher, but it's so charming that you mostly forgive it. Sidearms might be the least famous game on this list, but it's horrifyingly brutal. Seriously, it makes R-Type feel like child's play in comparison. I saw this cabinet once at a rundown arcade near a beach back in the 80s, and I had to try it out. Sidearms is a side-scrolling shooter where you pilot a mech suit. You can collect power-ups and even merge into another mech to make a more powerful form. But the game scrolls too fast, and enemies appear directly on top of you, and below you, and behind you. No warning. You die in one hit. One! Then you lose all your power-ups. I beat the first boss, then the second level started with a narrow vertical canyon that fire hoses you at the enemies and has no safe space to maneuver. If you didn't have all the power-ups already, there's no chance for survival. None. Capcom wanted to test your reflexes in the most sadistic way possible, and take all of your allowance as a kid. If you find it on a compilation or an emulation, seriously, just try and play it. Then, apologize to your thumbs. Ninja Gaiden was famous for its incredible cutscenes and brutal enemy placement. The Attract mode blew my mind. Story sequences in an arcade game? Then I put my quarter in and realized the future was also very angry. You play as Ryu Hayabusa. Fast-paced action, wall jumps. But the game knocks you back when hit, usually directly into a pit. And you might survive the hit, but that knockback kills you anyway. And the final boss sends you back to the very beginning of the level if you lose. That's pain. But the visuals are still top tier for 1988. And if you thought the NES port was challenging, the arcade version is faster, harder, and even more punishing. And I thought arcades were supposed to be fun. Gauntlet from 1985 is on this list for one specific reason. Your health constantly drains. Even if you don't get hit, you'll lose health over time. You have to keep moving and eating food pickups. I remember my friends laughing when I'd panic and run into enemy fire just to reach a turkey leg. Over time, I began to respect the game's design choice. It forces aggression. But as a kid, I thought it was a cheap way to take my quarters. You pick a character, a warrior, Valkyrie, wizard, or elf. You fight ghosts, grunts, demons, and sorcerers. You open doors, find treasure, and try to survive and reach the next exit. It invented the top-down dungeon crawling, however, the visuals are pretty repetitive. And the constant health drain means you're always on a timer. The announcer's voice saying, "Warrior needs food badly," it's burned into my memory. Gauntlet's a blast to play with friends, but it's a serious quarter muncher by design. But playing with friends, that pain is shared. I really liked the RoboCop game at the arcade as a kid, but it's hard because your character moves so slowly. RoboCop shuffles at a machine-like pace while the enemies jump around and shoot from all angles. I saw this cabinet right after the movie came out. The digitized voice said, "Dead or alive, you're coming with me." I just had to play it. The gun power-ups are powerful, but ammo's very limited. The punch is too slow, and the arcade version had a time limit on every stage. You had to march Robocop forward directly into enemy fire, or the countdown would do you in. Some stages have these cheap instant death pits you can't see coming, and the final level with the elevators is virtually impossible since there's too much slowdown in the frame rate and cheap shots everywhere. I mean, I had to continue dozens of times playing it on emulation recently to actually see the ending. Hard Drivin' is the only driving game on this list, and it earned its spot. It was one of the first arcade games to use flat-shaded 3D polygon graphics. The cabinet had a force feedback steering wheel, shifter, and clutch pedal. But as a youngster, I had no idea how to drive a stick. The game simulates real driving physics. You have to brake and shift gears to avoid spinning out. One wrong turn, and you'd crash hard. The learning curve is unforgiving. Most arcade games are easy enough to figure out on a credit or two. Hard Drivin' requires genuine skill, and the 3D effect was pretty mind-blowing for 1989. But this game was designed to make you crash. A lot. Smash TV from 1990 floods the screen with hundreds of enemies and has a frantic energy as you run around mowing down the hordes with its twin-stick controls. I know, it's technically not from the 80s, so I can't put it on the main list, but it was designed to drain your quarters through addictive action and brute force. Its gameplay was directly inspired by the arcade classic Robotron 2084. But I challenge you, just try to play one credit and then walk away. Anyone who's played it knows, you'll inevitably come back and throw quarter after quarter into this magnificent beast. So, as we've seen, the hardest games from the 80s are a lesson in patience and rage. Well, mostly rage. But I still love them, and hope you did too. Alright my friends, this is the Retro Gaming Boss signing out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.